Something is whistling outside my house. Post 1. I'm going to be honest. The last few nights have been a little more than sleepless. I live in rural Tennessee. I'd like to keep my location private for obvious reasons, so I'm more than used to noises in the middle of the night. This is kind of unnerving though. The noises started about a week ago. It wasn't anything more than something big crunching over weeds and sticks at first. My initial assumption was that it was a bear. Black bears are incredibly common around here. Mountain lions too, but those are a lot louder than a bear. Scary as hell too. I don't know about you, but I nearly shit myself the first time I heard one out in the woods. It was like being in a horror movie, because they scream like a woman being murdered or a baby crying. Neither sound is something you want to hear in the middle of the woods when you're alone. Anyway, getting off topic, I should probably just start from the beginning. The day it all started was uneventful. I'm an introverted person, so most of my days are spent at home, or generally on my property while my wife is at work. I'd done a bit of yard work and noticed some things were out of place. Of course, I just brushed this off. The neighbour's dog could have just gotten into my yard tools and dragged them around. Hell, my dog could have done it. Well, maybe not. He's a little dog, so that ruled him out. Either way, I tidied up the area and went about my day. Me and my wife talked idly about our day that evening before we eventually retired to bed. I don't remember when I woke up exactly, but my wife was asleep next to me. Leah was a heavy sleeper, while I was the exact opposite. I thought I had a nightmare or something when I jolted awake. Our bedroom was pitch black. I took a deep breath and sighed as I decided to try and lay back down. Just as my head hit the pillow, I heard it. There's an easy way to tell the difference between the footfalls of a heavy versus a smaller animal. Deer have smaller hooves, meaning they make less noise when walking around and grazing. Bears, on the other hand, have large paws and up to 500 pounds of weight hitting with each step. The cracking of foliage and sticks told me there was something big outside my window. I looked over at the blurry figure of my dog, Zeus, who was standing at attention at the foot of my bed. I shook my head and reached a hand down to my little guard dog and gave him a gentle pat on the head. You heard it too, huh? It's just a bear or something, dude. Nothing's eating you tonight. I joked with a yawn, but he didn't move. His eyes were wide and staring at the wall underneath my window. Zeus growled lowly as the siding of my house creaked with a weight pressing against it. Yeah, definitely a bear. They rubbed their scent on everything. Dude, chill. I huffed in annoyance as he continued to growl. Weird. Most little dogs had Napoleon syndrome, but Zeus wasn't like that. He yipped and barked occasionally when he was excited, but never growled more than the occasional playful gruffs. When it became obvious that he wasn't going to let up, I resigned to picking him up under my arm and ousting him from the bedroom. I hated doing it, but I wanted to actually sleep tonight so I could get things done in the morning. With that done, I managed to get back to sleep, despite the rustling outside. The next day is when I noticed something was off. After Leah left for work, I decided to see if the bear had gotten into anything. To my surprise, nothing was out of place. I thought this was weird for a bear. They could easily kill you, but the big guys were like forest puppies. They got into anything with an infant-like curiosity. My bird feeders were untouched, and my garden was unplundered. The only thing I could find to prove that anything had been here was some weird impressions in the mud. It had rained last night, so I couldn't be sure what I was looking at. Obviously this wasn't what it was, but it looked like something long, like a human foot, but with long divots like claws. Of course, it was weird looking, but if you slid your feet in the mud, the prints would look pretty freaky too. Bear tracks can get distorted too like that. I don't think it was anything to mention to my wife. She slept through the whole thing, so I didn't see a need to freak her out. The bear was miles away by now. Nothing to worry about. The sounds came back that night. They were there every night for the next 4 days. I was awoken each time by the noises of trampled weeds and the creaking siding of the house. Zeus wasn't having any of this either, and would growl every time this started. I still said nothing to my wife, because I assumed this was a normal animal. It was last night that the whistling started. I was sleeping peacefully until my dog started to growl. He wasn't on the bed, and I groaned in annoyance at him. This nightly routine was starting to affect my mental state. It wasn't a great feeling to be awoken from sleep suddenly every night. "I swear to God, Zeus," I muttered as I sat up and snatched my glasses from the nightstand. I was about to, once again, take him to the living room to sleep when I heard it. Now, I know what a person whistling sounds like, and that is exactly what I heard. It wasn't a tune or anything, just one long continuous note that occasionally drifted into higher and lower notes like a wave. Now this scared me. I live on a back road with nothing for almost 10 miles either way you drive. I have 2 neighbours on either side of me, about 100 feet away from my yard. One is this nice little old lady, and the other was an older guy who had a few pit bulls that my dog played with. Neither of them would have any reason to be in my yard at this time of night, nor would either of them be fucking whistling outside my window. The whistle made Zeus start barking, waking my wife with a start.
What?
Leah said, looking around the dark room and rubbing her eyes, as if that would help her vision adjust any faster. Zeus was still barking, and now on the floor, clawing at the wall with dull claws that did nothing. My eyes had adjusted enough to the darkness that I could see her face contort from confusion to fear as she heard the sound of Zeus's barking.
Chris, what the fuck is that?
Leah asked with a whisper as she reached for the lamp on her side of the bed. I grabbed her arm quickly, hoping it wasn't too rough. "Don't!" I whispered, looking at her with equally wide eyes. "I'm going to call the cops. Make sure the front and back doors are locked. Keep the lights off." We both slowly crept out of bed as Zeus's barks became muffled once leaving into the rest of the house. Cell reception isn't great out here, so we have a house phone. As Leah went past me to double check all the locks, I grabbed the phone and dialed 911.
911, what is the address of the emergency?
The operator sounded tired, which made sense since I saw the time from the wall clock read 2:55 a.m. I gave the address with a hushed urgency as I stepped to peek past the curtain to the front porch. It was impossible to see anything out there, so I stepped back as I heard their faint typing.
Okay, and what is the emergency?
"There's this guy, or, well, I guess I don't know who's out there." I started and glanced back towards the hall that led to our room. "But there's someone on my property, and I want an officer here as soon as possible." I finally got my thoughts together.
What are they doing?
The operator asked as there was more typing. "Nothing really. They're whistling. I know that doesn't sound like anything, but I'm worried there might be more people who might try and break in," I said, adding on to my answer quickly so as to not be dismissed. There was a pause on the other side of the line before a faint sigh. They must have forgotten to mute themselves, and I tried to swallow my frustration.
Alright, I'll have an officer head your way. It'll be about 30 minutes to get someone over there. Do you need me to stay on the line?
They asked, but obviously didn't want to do this. "No, it's fine, thank you." I should have made them stay on the phone, but decided against it. I hit the end call button with a huff, and my wife spoke from behind me.
Is someone coming?
Leah whispered, still scared from the situation we found ourselves in. I nod, tossing the phone into the couch. "Yeah, in about 30 minutes hopefully," I sighed, as I walked quietly towards the bedroom. I could hear Zeus barking, so I assumed the person was still outside. We made the collective decision to stay in the living room with our backs to the far wall. Leah watched the kitchen doorway, while I watched the front door and nearby window. We didn't have anything in means of defense, but I did have a lamp directly behind me that could, feasibly, be used for some blunt force trauma. Those next 30 minutes were the longest of my life. I was so thankful when red and blue lights pulled up the small hill of my driveway. I opened the door and flipped the porch light on before the officer got the chance to get out of his car. I didn't know him by name, but this county was small, so I had seen him around before. Average height, with a bit of a gut and age starting to show in his face.
Morning, folks.
I could see that his nameplate said Jameson. I stepped out of the doorway, having quickly slipped on a pair of shoes. I wouldn't have called 3 a.m. morning, but I wasn't about to get uppity over a joke. Morning. I don't know if anyone's here anymore. Our dog stopped barking a minute ago. Neither of us wanted to go look around on our own, I told him as he nodded and gave a vague gesture to the yard.
Well, let's go take a look, yeah?
Officer Jameson suggested. I nodded, stepping off the porch with him. Leah opted to stay in the house while we went around to the side yard. I didn't expect to find anyone there, but what we did find was just as horrifying. Right below our window, lit up by the officer's flashlight, was long gashes in the siding of my house.
Looks like you had a bear over here. Or I suppose it could have been a cougar.
Officer Jameson said with a low whistle, leaning down to look at the damaged siding. I frowned, my heart sinking. Animal? No, it was a person. Someone was absolutely whistling out here, I said adamantly, as I tore my eyes away from the claw marks in my house. Why would a bear or mountain lion even do that?
Well, I don't see some fella doing that to your property.
He replied with a chuckle that felt like a slap in the face to my concern. My frown deepened and my brow furrowed. You aren't listening. There wasn't a goddamn animal out here. I couldn't understand what he was missing. What if whoever was out there was still around? What if they were using the whistling to, distract us from whatever else they were up to? At my outburst, his tone shifted immediately.
Hey, settle down. Whatever it was, person or animal, it's obviously gone now. I'll look around the rest of your property, but if I don't find anything, you should just head on back to bed, Officer Jameson stated seriously. I deflated at this and gave one more glance towards the damages. All right, I gave up and let him do his final sweep as I went inside and locked the door. He left soon after, and my wife and I returned to a very weary sleep. Nothing else happened after that. But now I'm sitting here this morning writing this. I don't know what to do. I could try and get a security camera, I guess. I just hope whatever or whoever it was leaves us alone tonight. Post 2. I don't have much time to write this, as we're in the middle of packing up. However, I'll try and explain the batshit insane events that have gone down since my last post. After the police left that night, I went out to inspect the damage on my house in the daylight. It was awful. The claw marks were so deep in the siding, I couldn't imagine the size of whatever did this. I know what I heard, but now I was beginning to second guess myself. While I was outside, my neighbor Jeff walked over. Scared the shit out of me when he did too. Jesus Christ, Jeff, you can't sneak up on me like that, I said after he came and tapped me on the shoulder. Jeff was my longtime neighbor. Like little old Mrs. Sanchez on the other side of my house, he'd bought his home when it had been built on the land. He was always nice. We would talk on occasion whenever our dogs would run around with each other. Now, I could see something was off with him. The whites of his eyes were rimmed in red and wet from tears already cried. Jeff had deep bags under his eyes as well, as if he hadn't slept all night. Oh, you look like shit, I said dumbly, quickly deciding to apologize. Jeff spoke before I could.
Yeah, I feel like it.
He leaned around me and eyed the state of my house.
Did something happen over here last night?
Yeah, some animal or something was outside my window, getting Zeus all rolled up. Called the cops and the guy didn't seem too worried about it. Got a camera coming in on Friday to try and see if anything comes back, I explained, noticing Jeff's dog weren't by his side like usual.
Where's Marley and B? I asked curiously. I could see the emotion in his eyes immediately after I spoke, my heart aching as I understood.
Something got him last night. I didn't see what. I heard them barking, then yelping. I ran outside with my gun after I got it out of the case. It was already gone by then.
He rubbed his eyes roughly. Jeff, man, I'm so sorry. I put a hand on his shoulder and he shook his head.
It's fine. I already got them. What's left of them. I got them in my truck. Going out to my hunting cabin for a few days to bury them. I just wanted to give you this.
He was holding something in his hand. I looked and frowned. Now, I'm not a gun enthusiast or anything, so I don't know what kind of gun he was handing me. It was small. Maybe some kind of revolver. Jeff had a box of ammo in his other hand.
Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what could have killed my girls, but they were fighting dogs. Rescues. They knew how to defend themselves. Even if it was a mountain lion or coyote, one of them would have gotten away. I just want you and your wife to be safe.
I didn't know what to say to that. I had never seen this man so deadly serious. Even if I didn't think I needed it, I nodded with a tight-lipped expression as I took the gun from his hand. Jeff thankfully explained to me how to safely operate and load it before I watched him walk back across the yard to his house. A moment later, he was pulling out his driveway and speeding down the road. I let Leah know what happened and sat with her while she had a long cry about it. I was teary-eyed about it too at the time. Obviously they hadn't been our dogs, but it was hard knowing we wouldn't see them again. The idea of something happening to our dog was also hanging in the air. I wasn't sure what I expected to happen, but Zeus woke us both, growling and barking as he clawed at the wall like he wasn't a half pint. We knew calling the police wouldn't do anything, so we sat there all night, lights off, as that long whistle emanated from outside. I wish that I could say it never came back after that. God, I wish I could say it left us alone. This isn't what happened though. I thought I would lose my mind last night when I couldn't take the sleep deprivation anymore. Every night it was whistling outside our window, and we were both exhausted and scared. Last night was my breaking point. I can't do this anymore, Leah, I said with a harsh whisper as I got out of bed. Zeus losing his mind once again as that fucking whistling was continuing outside. My wife, eyes exhausted yet filled with worry, crawled out of bed as I opened the drawer on the bedside table. I honestly didn't know exactly what I was going to do when I pulled out the revolver Jeff had given me.
What the hell are you doing?
Leah hissed as she grabbed my arm. I just shook my head as I shakily loaded it. I had never touched the gun since Jeff had put it into my hands. I didn't think I would need it until now.
Chris, come on, this isn't funny.
She whispered, pleadingly as I gently pulled my arm away and left the bedroom. She followed, her footsteps on creaky floors just behind me. I'm going to end this right now, I said seriously, as I kept the lights off, entering the kitchen to rifle through a nearby drawer. I could feel my wife's gaze on my back as I felt around until I found what I was looking for. With a click, I tested the little flashlight. It was one of those fancy ones that are compact but bright as well. I bought it because I assumed I would need it. I hadn't used it but 2 other times, so I figured it could finally make itself useful as I got some duct tape from the drawer as well.
Please don't go out there.
Leah begged from the doorway. I quickly taped the light to the gun, hoping the added weight wouldn't mess up my already amateur aim. I clicked it off for now and looked at Leah's silhouette in the doorway. Look, if it's a bear or whatever, I'll just scare it off. And tomorrow, we can try to pack things up, we can get a hotel, and see if your parents will let us crash for a week or 2 while we figure it out. I said with less confidence than I'd intended. I couldn't see her face after having the light on, but I could tell she wasn't convinced.
But what if...
I stopped her as I walked over. If I'm not back in 5 minutes, just call the police, okay? I said, not giving any more room for argument. I slipped past her and checked to make sure the safety was off. Leah didn't respond as I unlocked the door and clicked on my light. Just as I pulled the door open, Zeus rocketed past my legs and vanished into the darkness.
Panic flooded my body as I immediately took off after him. Our Porsche didn't have any railings and was only a feet or two high, so I followed after his backing unhindered. My blood went ice cold when I heard a pitiful yelp. I ran faster around the side of the house, aiming my gun and attached flashlight ahead of me. What I saw next made my stomach churn. In the beam of my flashlight was something. I don't know what that fucking thing was. It was big, easily taller than me, if it was standing. Its skin was a sickly white, like it was almost translucent. The thing had its back to me, and I could see its spine, like the skin was vacuum sealed to the bone. It was like a walking skeleton. It was then that my ears recognized the sick sound of flesh and bone tearing from one another. The beam of my flashlight shook as I slowly pointed it to the ground by the creature. It was Zeus. My once excitable dog was now laying lifeless on the ground, his unseeing eyes staring back at me. Jesus fucking Christ! I whimpered as I hurled whatever was in my stomach. I had just realized that all I saw was his head. It wasn't attached to his body anymore. As my stomach emptied itself on the ground, I backed up and tried to train my gun on this freak of fucking nature that killed my dog. My hands trembled as it was now looking right at me. It didn't have a fucking face. Where a face should have been was a pitch black hole. At the bottom of it, where the white skin still showed, was red from my dog's blood. We stood there for a moment before it let out a long and low whistle, slowly shifting its body towards me. I didn't think. I just pulled the trigger. Once. Twice. 3 times before it seemed to hit. The moment my trembling shot struck its shoulder, it jolted back in what seemed to be pain. I didn't want to find out as I turned tail and ran once I saw something wet and black drip down his too thin arm. The noise that followed scared me more than anything I've ever heard before. It was like a high-pitched, inhuman scream. I've never heard anything like it before, and I hope I never hear it again. I scrambled onto my porch and hoped to whatever fucking god was out there that it wasn't right behind me. I threw the door open and flung myself against it to close it. Leah screamed at my sudden appearance. I could see she was on the phone now that one lamp was on. "You tell them to send the fucking cops right now," I shouted as I listened intensely for anything. There was nothing. No screaming on the other side of the door, no clawing, no whistling. She did as I instructed, as I slid down the door and sat the gun next to me. I sat on the floor sobbing after that. I was in shock until then, but who wouldn't be? The next thing I knew, Leah was sitting next to me on the couch, saying that the police were gone. I didn't realize how much time had passed, but her expression was grim.
They said a mountain lion or coyote got him. There wasn't anything out there but him.
Leah said quietly. I shook my head. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't human. I don't know what the fuck it was, I said quietly, still shell-shocked.
Are you sure?
She asked, and I nodded. That image of it, and blood seared into my mind. We both agreed to just start packing that night and leave as soon as we could the next day. We have most of it in random boxes and bags we found in our closets. I'm trying to write this as quickly as I can while she's taking everything out to the car. It took almost all day to find our keys, so now we're rushing to get out of here. I made a drawing of what I saw. I don't know what this thing was, but I needed to get it out of my head. If anyone recognizes it, please let me know. And if you hear something whistling outside your house at night, don't go looking for it. This is going to be my only update, as we decided to sell the house. It's starting to get dark, but I think I can hear my wife in the hallway. It's weird though. I don't think Leah can whistle.